According to several religions, there's a place where sinners go after they die. It's often depicted as horrifying beyond words, and a place you definitely don't want to spend your afterlife. The three people in this video say that hell not only exists, but they've been there. Before today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. If you want to see a case or topic covered by Paranormally Listed, then go to criminallylisted.com and fill out the questionnaire under the Suggest a Case tab. Number 3. Kenneth Erwin Hagin. In August 1917, Kenneth Erwin Hagin was born weighing less than 2 pounds with a deformed heart. The doctor who delivered him in McKinney, Texas, thought he was stillborn because he appeared lifeless. But he survived. Kenneth never felt normal compared to other children because he couldn't run or play like his peers. On April 22, 1933, 15-year-old Kenneth was bedridden at his grandmother Drake's home. His heart was causing him trouble and he was ill with a blood disease. His mother, brother, and grandmother were sitting next to him that night. Kenneth felt his whole body go numb. He squeezed out a weak goodbye to his family as his heart stopped. Kenneth felt himself leap out of his body as if his soul jumped out of the physical realm. He could see his family and his physical body on the bed, but he couldn't say anything or move. Then he descended into what felt like a dark, hot cave. Finally, he hit the bottom of the cave. At the bottom, he saw a gate. Behind it were huge white flames dancing around a white crest. He grew up going to church, and he knew where he was. He was in hell. He also knew that if he went beyond the gate, he would never get out. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a creature. The creature grabbed his arm to escort him past the gate. Suddenly, Kenneth heard a voice speak in a foreign language. The whole cave shook. Then the creature took its hand off Kenneth's arm. A force pulled Kenneth out of the cave toward a light. And then Kenneth saw a porch surrounding an old house, a porch swing, and cedar trees. He recognized everything, and he knew where he was. It was his grandmother's house. Kenneth drifted through the wall. He saw his physical body lying in bed, and his grandmother was holding him. Kenneth's mother was elsewhere in the house, crying because Kenneth had died. Kenneth's brother was at a neighbor's house, calling the doctor. At that moment, it was like his soul slipped back into his body. His heart started beating again, and he opened his eyes. "Granny, I'm going again, and I won't be back," he said. She responded, "Son, I thought you weren't coming back that time." Kenneth told his grandmother to pass along this message to his mother. "I love you." Then his body went numb. His heart stopped again. He slipped down into the familiar dark cave until he arrived at the gates of hell. The creature met him once again and grabbed his arm. Kenneth heard a man's voice speak in a foreign language. Then the entire cave shook, and the creature once again let go of his arm. Beyond his control, Kenneth once again floated up away from the cave. This time he ended up at the foot of the bed where his physical body was lying. He leaped back into his body and once again talked to his grandmother. He said to his grandmother that he really wouldn't come back this time. Almost comically, she replied, "Son, I thought you weren't coming back that time." For a third time, his body went numb. He jumped out of his physical body and descended into the dark, hot cave. In the darkness, he yelled to God that he had been baptized and he belonged to the church. But Kenneth didn't hear God's response, only the echo of his voice through the cave. For the third time, the creature took his arm. Kenneth asked for his sins to be forgiven. Kenneth heard a voice speak in a foreign language, and the creature let go. Then something pulled Kenneth up from the cave and back into his body at his grandmother's house. When he came back into his physical body, he was mid-prayer. This time, he stayed in his physical body. He remained there for the next 3 months until August 1933, just 4 days before his 16th birthday. That day was a typical hot southern day with a temperature of 41 degrees Celsius, and yet Kenneth's body was cold. Kenneth knew he was dying. After all, he knew the feeling. He had died 3 times already. But when he died this time, the room lit up with a bright light. Once again, he left his physical body and saw himself lying in bed. His body was lifeless and his mouth was open. A voice in English said, "Go back, your work is not done." Kenneth slipped back into his physical body and once again awoke. This time, he was sure he wouldn't die at a young age. Kenneth's mom, Lily, and his grandmother said that when Kenneth descended into the light, they couldn't get into the bedroom where Kenneth's body was lying. The door was open, but something unforeseen was stopping them from entering. They sensed the presence of God, so they backed up and prayed. At the age of 17, Kenneth started preaching. He eventually grew his congregation into an international ministry. In 1963, Kenneth founded a worldwide ministry called Rhema. In 1967, he started a radio program that still runs today called Rhema for Today. In 1968, Kenneth published the first issue of the magazine The World of Faith. Kenneth Hagin went on to get married and had 2 children. Reverend Kenneth Hagin died at the age of 86 in 2003. But this time, it seems, he was finally laid to rest. Number 2. Rebecca Umwali. Early April 1994 was the start of the worst genocide in Rwandan history. The civil war in the East African country was between the Hutu and the Tutsi. Until April 6, 1994, the Hutu held political power in the country. On that day, a plane carrying Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana was shot down by a missile. Everyone on board was killed. The plane crash galvanized Hutu extremists to kill 800,000 people. One of the families that was nearly wiped out during the 100 Days of War was the Umwali family. 10-year-old Rebecca Umwali hid with her parents and 8 siblings in a Catholic church during the genocide. Churches were supposed to be safe places of refuge. Sadly, a Hutu group stormed the church with guns and machetes. Rebecca's parents and all her siblings were slaughtered. Rebecca survived because a woman who was killed fell on top of her, hiding her from the Hutu militia. After the war, Rebecca lived with her cousin and started school in Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda. In 1996, Rebecca met a girl named Alice at school. Rebecca said Alice helped her forget the pain of the war. They were best friends and told each other everything. 6 months after they met, Alice brought Rebecca to a local cemetery. Alice knelt at a cross over a tomb and started talking in a language Rebecca didn't understand. The tomb opened up and a staircase appeared. Alice stood up and her energy was completely different. She turned toward Rebecca and in a rage said, "Kill her." Then Alice grabbed Rebecca's hand and forced her down the stairs. Rebecca said the trip down the stairs felt like 30 minutes. They entered the darkness and were greeted by many people. Those people brought Alice and Rebecca to a cabin that had many fridges. One of the people opened a fridge door, and inside the fridge were human legs and skulls. Another person opened a different fridge and it contained cups filled with blood. The person put cups of blood in front of Alice and Rebecca, who were seated at a table. They also ate something. Who knows if it came from the fridge with the human limbs? At this point, Rebecca felt that she had become possessed by a demon. She also realized that Alice was a demon who tricked her into coming into the underworld. Rebecca lived in the underworld for 5 years. The world looked like ours, except it was always night. There were many beautiful houses. Rebecca toured one house and found a photo of Satan, plus photos of others who were in this world. People's photos would end up on these walls if they repeatedly sinned. Rebecca met a group of beautiful girls who were demons. They would go to the world of the living on weekends and cause havoc. These girls especially liked to seduce Christian husbands so that they would commit adultery, which is a sin in that religion. Rebecca started working at a factory that made beauty products out of children. The demons would go to the world of the living, steal kids, and bring them to the factory. Afterward, these products would be sold in the land of the living. Rebecca went to a meeting in the underworld and the group was talking about Alice. They said Alice was two people representing one person, as in her soul and her physical body were two different people, or things. A demon possessed Alice's physical body and her soul was stuck in the underworld. Rebecca realized that this probably happened to her too. The demon on Earth who was in her physical body was spending time with her cousin, who was even going to school in Rebecca's body. But people had noticed. Her classmates noticed how Rebecca suddenly had so much knowledge about horror. Rebecca, the soul in the underworld, came to understand that there were 3 phases to hell. One phase has spirits of the dead, another has demons, the third has living people, which is where Rebecca was. During the 5 years Rebecca was in the underworld, she had the power to cause horrible things to happen on Earth, and she did, but she won't exactly say what she did. Rebecca eventually found the entry she originally entered this world through, and she climbed out. A group of Pentecostal Christians prayed for the demons to release her, and it worked. At age 17, Rebecca converted to the Pentecostal church. Today, she travels around Rwanda, telling her story of going to hell and returning to Earth. Number 1. John Ramirez. 60-year-old John Ramirez grew up in the Bronx, New York, surrounded by witches and warlocks because his family was into spiritualism. His father was also an alcoholic. One day, when John was young, his parents blindfolded him, put him in a bath, and called upon demons. From that moment forward, John's personality changed for the darker. He eventually became a devil worshipper. He'd sneak into funerals of strangers because he wanted to get the soul of the person who died. He'd run to people when they were killed in the street because he wanted to drain their blood and use it for witchcraft. When John was 13 years old, his father died in a bar fight. One night after his dad died, John prayed to God to help his mother. Instead of God, the devil responded. He said, "No one loves you, but I love you. Your father can't provide for you, but I'm your provider. To the religion, I'll give you anything you want. Just ask." From then on, Satan was the father John never had. John learned how to astral project, which is where his consciousness would leave his physical body. His consciousness would fly all over the world and curse neighborhoods. In his mid-20s, John met a woman he liked. She was a Christian, and as a Satanist, John found that highly amusing. After John would hang out with the woman, he'd go worship the devil. Out of amusement, John went to a Christian church with the woman. When he was at the altar, a demon possessed him. John picked up the pastor by the throat and said, "I came for you." Men from the congregation pulled John off the pastor. Then, the congregation of more than 200 people raised their hands and prayed. For whatever reason, John kept going back to the Christian church. A few days after John choked the priest, a congregation member approached him and told him, "Christ loves you." As someone who hadn't really experienced love, he was amazed and confused because he had committed himself to Satan. One night, John prayed, sort of. He told God he didn't like him and never wanted to be Christian. He told God he would worship the devil until he died. He then said, "If you're bigger than the God that I serve, then you show me tonight or leave me alone." Then John went to bed and dreamed he was on a subway. The train was packed with people who looked drained. A woman yelled at John, "Traitor, you're leaving us." Then the train doors opened and he stepped out. It was completely dark. John walked through a maze of tunnels, and the further he went, the hotter it got. But it wasn't regular heat, not even the heat of a desert in the summer. It was a kind of heat that chokes you, and there's no escape. Then the devil appeared to John and said, "I've been with you since you were 9 years old. I've been a father to you. I've given you everything. I'm going to keep you here, because if I can keep you here, you won't wake up upstairs." By upstairs, the devil meant John wouldn't wake up on earth. Then the devil said, "You belong to me. You're not going to leave. You know too many secrets of my religion." Then the devil went to grab John. Suddenly, a big cross ended up in John's hands. John put the cross on the devil, and he felt the devil's powers shrink. Then John woke up, and he felt like this darkness he's felt since he was a kid was gone. John grabbed a paper and a pen and wrote down, "I'm a servant, a slave of Jesus Christ. I'll serve you all the days of my life." John threw out all his witchcraft paraphernalia. But for the next month, he was tormented by a dark spirit. He'd wake up to someone's hands around his throat, picking him off the bed, trying to suck the soul from his body. In these moments, John would call out to Jesus, and the choking feeling would go away. John asked God why he was letting the torment happen. God responded to John, saying he wanted him to know how much John trusted him. After that night, the dark spirit never returned. John Ramirez is now an author, speaker, and devout evangelist. He said that he now feels like he has a purpose in life. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.